Out on the far edge of the prairie, where the ground split like tired hands beneath an unforgiving sun, Samuel Hawk worked his land alone. People in the nearest town barely remembered him. They called him the quiet farmer, the one who never lingered, never argued prices, never stayed long enough to be known. Tall and broad-shouldered, with hands permanently roughened by rope and soil, Samuel spoke only when the land demanded it. Crops, water, weather, nothing more. His farmhouse stood a mile from the nearest road, weathered and stubborn, much like the man who lived inside it. That morning, the sky carried a pale gold light, the kind that promised heat before noon. Samuel set aside his tools and walked toward the far fence line, where a post had leaned too long against the wind. He moved steadily, boots crunching dry earth, humming an old tune without realizing it, a lullaby his mother once sang before the world took her too soon. When he reached the fence, he stopped. Something small was there. Curled against a crooked post sat a boy, no older than 9, maybe 10. Thin, too thin. His shirt hung loose on narrow shoulders, dirt smudged across his face. Dark hair fell into frightened eyes that lifted slowly to meet Samuel's. The boy didn't run. That, more than anything, unsettled Samuel. He lowered himself carefully, keeping his movements slow. The boy's hands trembled in his lap. His lips parted, but no sound came. Samuel removed his hat and held it against his chest. "You're a long way from anywhere," he said quietly. The boy stared at him. Then, hesitantly, he raised one finger and pointed, not toward the road, but back the way Samuel had come, toward the house. Samuel swallowed. He extended his hand, palm open. The boy hesitated only a moment before placing his small, dusty fingers into Samuel's callous grip. The touch was light, fragile. Samuel lifted him without effort and turned back toward the farmhouse, every step feeling heavier than the last. The boy didn't protest. He leaned into Samuel's shoulder as if exhaustion had finally won. Inside the house, Samuel set him down on a wooden chair near the window and fetched water in a tin cup. The boy drank as though afraid it might disappear. Samuel offered bread next. The boy stared at it, eyes wide, then took it with both hands and ate slowly, carefully, like someone who had learned food was never guaranteed. Samuel watched, something tightening in his chest. He brought out a clean shirt, too big, and trousers worn thin but whole. The boy changed without speaking. When Samuel gently combed dirt from his hair with his fingers, the boy flinched, then relaxed. "Name?" Samuel asked softly. The boy looked down. No answer. Samuel nodded. "That's all right." That night, Samuel cooked stew and set the bowl before him. The boy didn't eat at first. Instead, he pulled a small object from inside his shirt, a rough wooden bird, its wings chipped and uneven. He held it like a shield. Samuel didn't ask. Later, as the fire burned low, Samuel laid a blanket on the cot. The boy climbed beneath it, eyes wide, scanning the unfamiliar room. Samuel turned away, pretending to busy himself, giving the child space to breathe. When Samuel checked again, the boy was asleep, clutching the wooden bird against his chest. Samuel stood there longer than he meant to. By morning, when the sun spilled gold across the fields, Samuel knew one thing with painful certainty. This boy hadn't wandered here by accident, and Samuel Hawk wasn't about to let him be taken away. The boy woke before dawn. Samuel noticed because the house had gone too quiet. Usually, mornings announce themselves. The creak of cooling boards, the faint whistle wind through loose shingles, the kettle ticking on the stove. But that morning there was only stillness. Heavy, watchful, Samuel rose from his chair and crossed the room. The boy lay awake on the cot, eyes open, fixed on the ceiling. His fingers were knotted tightly around the wooden bird. "You sleep?" Samuel asked gently. The boy shook his head. Samuel nodded and poured warm water into a bowl, setting it beside him. "We'll eat soon," he said. "Then there's work." The word work didn't frighten the boy. In fact, he seemed to relax at it. Outside, the sun climbed slowly, painting the fields pale gold. Samuel led the boy out among the struggling rows and showed him how to pull weeds without tearing the roots of young plants. He demonstrated once, then placed the boy's small hands where they needed to be. The boy learned quickly. They worked side by side, silent but steady. Bend, pull, toss. After a while, Samuel handed him a piece of bread. The boy ate without hesitation now, crumbs dusting his chin. When Samuel ruffled his hair, the boy startled, then smiled. Just a little. That was when the sound came. Hooves. Distant but unmistakable. The boy froze. Samuel straightened slowly, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. 3 riders cut across the far rise, dust trailing behind them like smoke. Their posture was rigid, purposeful. Samuel stepped in front of the boy. "Stay here," he said quietly. The boy didn't move. He clutched a wooden bird and watched as Samuel walked forward, boots firm against the dry earth. The riders approached at a measured pace. Badges glinted in the sun. Lawmen. The lead rider reined in his horse. "Samuel Hawk," he called. "You live alone out here?" "I do," Samuel replied. The man's gaze drifted past him, toward the house, the field. The boy, half hidden behind a post. "We're searching for a child. Went missing from the county home. Mute. Answers to no name." Samuel felt his chest tighten. "He's here," Samuel said, "and he's staying." The deputy shifted uneasily. "That's not your decision." Samuel stepped closer. "It is when he's under my roof." The lead rider studied Samuel for a long moment. The wind tugged at coats and reins. Finally, the man sighed. "We'll report him found. Judge may have words." "Then he can come speak to me," Samuel said evenly. The lawmen turned back toward the road. As they rode away, the boy ran to Samuel and pressed his face into his side, trembling. Samuel knelt and wrapped an arm around him. "You're safe," he murmured. That night, Samuel carved by lantern light. A small horse, crude but sturdy. When he handed it over, the boy traced its shape, then pressed his forehead against Samuel's arm. No words. No need. The next morning, Samuel packed. Canvas, bread, water, a change of clothes size for a boy who would grow. They left before sunrise. The trail led toward the hills, where the land rose and the roads disappeared. Rain came hard by midday, forcing them beneath a lone cottonwood. Samuel draped oilcloth over the boy's shoulders and held him close as thunder rolled overhead. At the swollen creek, Samuel crossed first, steadying the horse, then reached back and lifted the boy into the saddle. The boy's fingers locked around Samuel's sleeve. On the far bank, the storm broke open. Lightning split the sky. Ahead, the outline of a town appeared, Silver Bend. They reached the general store soaked and shaking. A woman behind the counter studied the boy, then the wanted poster beside the door. "I won't say a word," she said softly, sliding bread into the boy's hands. As they rode out again, dusk settling around them, the boy leaned forward and whispered his first sound since Samuel had found him. "Pa." Samuel closed his eyes against the burn in his chest and kept riding, because from that moment on, turning back was no longer possible. Night folded itself over the land like a heavy quilt. Samuel guided the horse off the trail and into a shallow ravine where sagebrush grew thick and the wind could not reach as easily. He dismounted first, then lifted the boy down, setting him gently on the ground. The child stayed close, the wooden horse clenched in one hand, eyes scanning the dark as if it might move. "We'll rest here," Samuel said, "just for the night." He showed the boy how to help, how to spread the canvas, how to gather small sticks without snapping them too loudly, how to crouch low while Samuel struck flint. When the fire finally caught, its glow pushed the shadows back just enough. The boy relaxed. They ate in silence, bread torn by hand, water shared carefully. When a coyote howled somewhere distant, the boy stiffened, but Samuel only nodded toward the sound. "Just voices," he said. "They won't come near the fire." The boy studied Samuel's face, as if memorizing it. Later, wrapped in blankets beneath the canvas, the boy shifted closer. His head rested against Samuel's arm. Samuel didn't move. He stared up at the stars instead, sharp and endless, the same ones he'd slept beneath all his life. "Tomorrow," Samuel said quietly, "we head west, into the hills." The boy nodded. At dawn, mist clung to the ground. Samuel woke first and found the boy already awake, sitting cross-legged, tracing shapes in the dirt with a stick. 3 lines, over and over again. "What's that?" Samuel asked. The boy hesitated. Then he pointed to the sky where the last stars faded. He tapped 3 times, then touched his chest. Samuel followed his gaze. "Orion's belt. You follow the stars?" Samuel asked. The boy nodded. Samuel breathed out slowly. "Then they led you here." They packed quickly and moved as the sun rose. The land changed as they climbed, soil turning darker, rocks sharper, air cooler. The boy stumbled once on loose gravel, and Samuel caught him before he fell. The boy looked up, startled, then grinned. A real grin this time. By midday, they reached a narrow pass where water trickled from stone. Samuel filled their canteens. The boy knelt and dipped the wooden bird into the stream, watching droplets cling to its wings. He looked up, then pointed to himself. Samuel waited. The boy pressed his palm to his chest again, then drew a rough symbol in the dirt, a crooked T, a circle. "Tom." Samuel guessed, uncertain. The boy froze. Then slowly he nodded. "Tom." Samuel repeated it softly. "Tom." Tom smiled. They reached an old cabin by evening, abandoned, half swallowed by pine and moss, but solid. Samuel cleared the hearth and lit a fire. Tom explored carefully, touching the table, the walls, the cot, as if afraid they might vanish. That night, Tom slept deeply. Days passed. They repaired the roof with canvas, planted near the creek, learned the land together. Tom followed Samuel everywhere, copying his movements, his patience, his silence. Slowly, sounds returned, soft breaths of laughter, small hums, half-formed words. No lawmen came. One evening, as the fire crackled low, Tom climbed into Samuel's lap without asking. He held up the wooden horse, then placed it carefully in Samuel's hand. "For you," he said, voice rough but steady. Samuel swallowed hard. "Thank you." Tom leaned his head against Samuel's chest. After a moment, he spoke again, clearer this time. "Papa." Samuel closed his eyes. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. Inside, something broken long ago finally fit back into place. And in that quiet cabin, far from roads and rules, a farmer and a boy became what neither had thought possible. A family. Autumn crept into the hills without asking permission. The mornings grew sharp, breath fogging the air as Samuel and Tom stepped outside to begin the day. Leaves turned amber and rust, drifting down like quiet promises of change. The small garden by the creek thrived, and the cabin, once forgotten, now carried the marks of care, patchboards, stacked firewood, a steady trail of boot prints at the door. Tom was no longer silent. His words came slowly, carefully, as if he tested each one before letting it go. Samuel never rushed him. He listened, nodded, waited. That patience made all the difference. One afternoon, while Samuel split logs, Tom crouched nearby, sorting nails by size. He looked up suddenly. "Papa, why they want you back?" Samuel's axe paused mid-swing. "They think rules matter more than people," Samuel said after a moment. "Sometimes they're wrong." Tom nodded, accepting the answer in the way only children can. He returned to his nails, humming under his breath. The sound of a branch snapping broke the rhythm. Samuel straightened. From the trees emerged 2 riders. Not the same men as before. These ones wore town coats beneath their dust and carried themselves with the confidence of men who believed the land owed them answers. One dismounted, glancing around the cabin with narrowed eyes. "Samuel Hawk," he said, "you've been hard to find." Tom froze. Samuel stepped forward. "You're trespassing." The man smiled thinly. "Court order. County judge wants the boy returned." Samuel felt Tom's fingers clutch the back of his shirt. "He's not going," Samuel said. "You don't have papers," the second man said. "No claim." Samuel looked down at Tom, then back at them. "I have him." The first man scoffed. "That won't stand." Samuel shifted his stance, quiet, immovable. "It will here." A tense moment stretched between them. The men exchanged glances. They hadn't expected resistance. "Not out here." "We'll be back," one said, with authority. They rode off. That night Tom couldn't sleep. Samuel sat beside him, hand steady on his back. "We may have to move again," he said honestly. Tom lifted his head. "Together? Always." At dawn, they packed only what mattered. Before leaving, Tom placed a wooden bird on the hearth, then hesitated. Samuel watched. Tom shook his head, tucked it back into his pocket, and took Samuel's hand. They headed deeper into the mountains, toward a place where no one knew their names, and where love, once chosen, could not be taken by force. The mountains did not welcome them easily. The trail narrowed as Samuel and Tom climbed higher, twisting between stone walls and stand of pine that blocked the sun for hours at a time. The air thinned, colder now, biting at fingers and ears. Tom stumbled more often, his small legs struggling to match Samuel's long stride. Samuel slowed without being asked. They crossed streams swollen with snowmelt. Samuel went first every time, boots sinking, arms stretched back so Tom could grip his sleeve. Once, the current knocked Tom's feet out from under him. Samuel caught him instantly, lifting him against his chest until the danger passed. Tom clung to him, shaking. "Papa, I was scared." "I know," Samuel said, holding him tighter. "I've got you." They reached an old line shack near dusk, little more than a roof and 3 walls. But it cut the wind. Samuel built a fire while Tom gathered pine needles for bedding. They shared the last of the bread and a strip of dried meat. That night, snow began to fall. It came softly at first, then thicker, whispering against the shack like a warning. Tom watched it through the open side, eyes wide. Will they find us? Samuel looked into the dark trees. Not tonight. But he knew the truth. Running could only last so long. The next morning, the snow lay heavy and clean. Samuel stood outside, studying the tracks they'd left behind. Fresh, easy to follow. Tom stepped beside him. "We keep going." Samuel knelt so they were eye to eye. "Tom, listen to me. There may come a time when hiding isn't enough." Tom swallowed. "They take me?" Samuel shook his head. "No, they don't get to decide who your family is." Tom searched his face. "You promise?" Samuel placed his large hand over Tom's chest. "As long as this heart beats, you are my son." Something shifted in Tom then. He nodded once, firmly, like a man much older. By midday, they heard riders. Not close, but coming. Samuel made a decision. Instead of climbing higher, he turned east, toward a narrow canyon he knew from his father's old maps. Steep walls, loose stone, dangerous, but untraceable after snow. They moved fast. The canyon narrowed until the horses had to be led single file. Wind howled through the stone like a living thing. Snow drifted sideways. Tom slipped again, scraping his hands. He didn't cry. He stood, wiped his palms on his trousers, and kept walking. That was when Samuel understood. This wasn't just a boy following him. This was a son choosing him. They reached a hidden shelf carved into the canyon wall, just as the riders appeared above. Silhouettes against the gray sky. Voices echoed, confused. Horses refused a descent. Samuel pulled Tom close, covered his mouth gently as one rider cursed, and turned back. They waited until the canyon fell silent again. That night, huddled together under a canvas lean-to, Tom spoke softly. "Papa, if they come again, I won't go." Samuel closed his eyes. "Neither will I." In that moment, Samuel made his final choice. Not to run, not to hide, but to stand. Come spring, he would go to the judge himself, not as a thief of children, but as a father, and no law written on paper would outweigh the truth carved into his bones, because love, once chosen, was stronger than fear, and some promises were worth everything. Spring arrived quietly in the mountains. Snow thinned to silver veins along the slopes, and the creeks swelled with clean, cold water. New grass pushed through the dark soil, stubborn and alive. Samuel watched the land the way a man watches a promise being kept. They did not run anymore. When the thaw came, Samuel saddled a horse and packed their supplies, not in haste, but with purpose. Tom stood beside him, buckling his satchel with careful hands. Inside it lay the wooden bird, the wooden horse, and a folded piece of bread. "Where we going?" Tom asked. Samuel met his eyes. "To town." Tom stiffened. Old fear flickered there. Quick but real. They take me? Samuel crouched and placed both hands on Tom's shoulders. No, this time we walking together. The ride down from the mountains took a full day. When Silver Bend appeared below them, smoke curling from chimneys, Tom's grip tightened on the saddle horn. Samuel laid a steady hand over his. I'm here, he said. That won't change. They rode straight to the courthouse. Word traveled fast. People gathered quietly. Shopkeepers, farmers, women with children tugging at their skirts. The judge, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, listened as Samuel spoke. He did not shout. He did not beg. He told the truth. He spoke of the boy at the fence, of hunger, of silence born from fear, of nights spent protecting something fragile and good. He spoke of work shared, of trust earned, of a child who had learned to laugh again. And what do you call the boy? The judge asked. Samuel glanced down. Tom lifted his chin. Tom Hawk, he said clearly. A murmur swept the room. The judge studied them for a long moment. Then he set his pen down. Paper follows life, he said quietly, not the other way around. The gavel fell. It was done. Outside, the sun broke through clouds. Tom stood very still, as if afraid to move. Samuel knelt and opened his arms. Tom ran into them. Papa, he said, voice strong now, certain. We can go home. Samuel smiled, tears burning his eyes. Yes, son, we can. They rode back west together, the long way, through open land washed green by spring. No one followed. No one called after them. At the cabin, the garden waited. The creek sang. The mountain stood watch. Years passed. Tom grew tall and sure-footed. His laughter carried across the fields. He learned the land as Samuel had. Patiently, respectfully, on long summer nights. They sat beneath the stars, and Tom traced the same 3 lights in the sky. Those guided me once. Tom would say. Samuel would nod. They still do. When people spoke of Samuel Hawk, they no longer said lone farmer. They said father. They spoke of a boy who once had no voice and a man who taught him how to use it. Not with force, but with love. And on land once cracked and empty, something lasting had grown. Not just crops, but family. And that, more than anything, was the miracle that endured.